Good morning, it's October 1st, and this is To My Liberal Friends. Well, last night at midnight, the government shut down. Democrats refused to give the necessary votes to keep the government operating. There were a few Democrats that did break ranks, and they'll hold a couple more votes this week, and we'll see if some more Democrats come across. But if anyone really wants to know what the Democratic Party is all about, then they only had to listen to Chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Ken Martin. He told everyone what his views are and how he would exert total control power if the Democrats regained the majority. Now let's back up a bit and look back to 2021. Democrats had a majority in the U.S. Senate and the House. There was a constant drumbeat to abolish Rule 22, the filibuster rule. That would have allowed the Democrats to ram through all of the progressive agendas they had on their plate. The only thing that stopped them was two senators who caucused with them refused to go along. Senator Joe Manchin, the Democrat from West Virginia, and Kyrsten Sinema, an independent from Arizona. And they said no when it came to changing the rules of the Senate. They were criticized and called all sorts of names by the progressive wing of the party for not helping them to squash any Republican opposition. Senator Sinema penned an op-ed in the Washington Post entitled, quote, "We have more to lose than gain by ending the filibuster," end quote. In the op-ed, she gave some sage advice, quoting her, "Once in a majority, it's tempting to believe that you will stay in the majority. But a Democratic Senate minority used a 60-vote threshold just last year to filibuster a police reform proposal and a COVID relief bill that many Democrats viewed as inadequate. Those filibusters were mounted not as attempts to block progress, but to force continued negotiations toward better solutions," end quote. Well, it was only a short time later that the Republicans retook the majority. When that happened, Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader, who has tried to change the rule and abolish the filibuster, took to the floor of the Senate. Here are his exact words, quote, "To my Republican colleagues, I offer a word of caution and good faith. Take care not to misread the will of the people, and do not abandon the need for bipartisanship. After winning an election, the temptation may be to go to the extreme. We've seen that happen over the decades and has consistently backfired on the party in power. So instead of going to the extremes, I remind my colleagues that this body is most effective when it's bipartisan. If we want the next 4 years in the Senate to be as productive as the last 4, the only way that will happen is through bipartisan cooperation." Wow, that's Senator Schumer when the Republicans took the majority saying, "Don't do to us what we were going to do to you." Fortunately for Senator Schumer and the American public, the Republicans in the Senate are not going to change the rule. They clearly understand the benefit of having a rule that allows the minority to have a say in what happens to legislation. They have taken in a much more principled stand on the issue. Senator's brand of hypocrisy is particularly egregious, since he was advocating changing the Senate rules on a partisan basis to eliminate the minority party's ability to demand a higher standard of approval for controversial legislation, as opposed to advocating to get a particular bill across the line. He was, and then, when Schumer party loses, he easily turns around and becomes Mr. Bipartisanship. For that, there should be a word that goes beyond mere hypocrisy. It's called a liar. Now we come back to Mr. Martin. He makes it very clear what the Democratic Party's intentions are for this nation. On a recent podcast, Ken Martin had this to say, and I'm quoting him, "When we get into power next time, we damn well better make sure that D.C. is a state, that Puerto Rico is a state, that we eliminate the filibuster rule, right? We get rid of all these antiquated rules that sure in the past made some sense, but right now, with what we're dealing with this country, and we have a fascist regime trying to destroy our democracy, we cannot abide by those rules anymore. We can't be the only party with one hand tied behind our back. When we get in power, and we will get in power, we're going to win in 26, and we're going to win in 25, and when we are in power, we don't play by those antiquated playbook anymore. We go in there and do exactly what we want and what we said we're going to do," end quote. He calls the current administration a fascist regime, but he also makes clear that if Democrats regain the majorities, they will rule with absolute power. How many of you want to add the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico as states? They do, to increase their power in the House and Senate. They think they're going to get Democratic senators elected. They will throw out the filibuster rule so that a Republican minority will be unable to stop them from passing anything they desire. How many of you want AOC and Ilhan Omar to be completely in charge of what we pass in the Senate and House? I don't, and I think the rules are there to force bipartisanship, and Chuck Schumer knows it, but now he's afraid to say it because he doesn't want to lose his position of power. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.